focus on customer value, simplify, 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 and execute what you said you were going to do. One of my board members at Altel, when I was complaining about something after delivering a really good quarter, he said, if you're not happy when you can be, you never will be. So you have to celebrate wins, particularly in a complex evolution. Every meeting isn't going to be good. Every customer situation isn't going to be good. The financials may not be good, but you have to, as a leader, find a way to celebrate, to re-energize your team, to re-energize yourself.
This podcast is brought to you by Fast Slow Motion, a team of expert consultants that have helped thousands of growing businesses build scalable systems on the HubSpot and Salesforce platforms. To learn more, visit www.fastslowmotion.com. Hello and welcome back to the Fast Slow Motion podcast, where we share strategies, ideas, and insights to help you build a business you love while still enjoying your life. I'm your host, Eric Housh, and joining me today in the studio is Fast Slow Motion's CEO, John Burdett. John, thank you for being here.
Eric, so great to be here.
We also got a special guest today, Jeff Fox. Jeff is the CEO and founder of Circumference Group, and he brings a rare lens to the scaling conversation because he has lived it from both sides. So he's led large organizations as an operator, and today he works closely with leadership teams as an advisor and investor. Super excited to pick his brain today. Jeff, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here.
Jeff, we're just so grateful to have you on. I'm very grateful of our friendship and partnership, and it's been so much fun working with you and your team over the last couple of years. We are business partners, and you're part of our family and part of the Fast Slow Motion family. And I'm so excited to extend that to our audience who can learn a lot from you because you're an operator first. You've been there and done that. And you're also an investor and have a ton of experience investing in many, many companies and doing many, many things in your life. So very excited about what you're going to share, and I'm looking forward to what I'm going to learn today.
Yeah, I'm the same. And Jeff, John and I, obviously, we know your story, but a lot of our listeners may be meeting you for the first time, hearing about Circumference Group for the first time. So we'd love just the Cliff Notes version of your career story. What kind of businesses have you helped scale? What did you learn by being in that operator seat?
Well, so my story is has a backdrop, which is I grew up in Louisville, Kentucky. My father was first generation educated, so think America's a pretty good place. He was a doctor. And this will be fundamental to the scaling discussion. He was a business person and he was skilled labor, and he built his own practice, and he was a small businessman. He would talk to me not about medicine as much as the business of being a delivering quality services to his customers, his patients, and their families. And, we could eventually, benefit from his skilled labor and what it was worth in the economy. When I graduated college, I was very blessed with no connections or background in finance. I started on Wall Street. I learned to take a business situation and put a financial analysis around it on a spreadsheet. So that would have been 1984. And I was essentially in the financial advice and deal making support business for my first 12 years in the business world. I worked first in New York and then was recruited to Arkansas to work for a multi-billionaire family, the Stevens family, and help them build that services skill set. And then got hired by my largest customer, a company called Altel, which had grown extraordinarily with a lot of acquisitions, and was part of that team through 3 different transformation cycles over a 13-year period until we sold that business. Since then, I've been blessed to be invited to be the CEO of 2 different public companies, where I've used my financial background and operating experience from Altel to be part of transforming 2 different public companies, both of which had great people, great customers, great assets, but had been mispositioned through a series of risk transactions that didn't work.
You've obviously lived scale, both from an operator perspective and a financial analyst perspective, and also an investor. And perspective there. That often leads to complexity, as we all know. As you get bigger, things necessarily don't get simpler; they get harder and more difficult. Uh, when complexity shows up, and you go from that small, scrappy business to you're really growing. What's the first kind of complexity that usually surfaces first that you have to deal with?
There's typically a founder or a founder team that are highly tuned into customer needs, delivering solutions, and so there's this very proximate touch that the leadership team of a small business has. And as you grow and scale, the complexity of just that proximate understanding of what's really going on starts to break down as you end up with an organization or more customers, so less time with each situation. That is the first thing that breaks, and it manifests itself depending on what the business does, but it's always the same. Just that tight circle of people with their vision for value starts to get diluted and have to communicate and meet instead of work, deliver, and execute.
Yes, owners and founders are usually the problem, I guess, as you're saying that as a nice way, where we kind of choke the baby instead of letting the baby grow up and become independent.
Right. The blessing of a founder or a founder team is they can stay North Star focused, meaning customer value is still in their eyes. It's in the work product. It's in the team's expectation. So there's nothing bad about the scaling process. In fact, the scaling process is what I would call a constructive journey where people that are open, leaders that are open and start with, did the customer get what they paid for? Are my employees getting paid and rewarded and proud of what we do? When you have leaders that keep those things connected, the scaling process really happens much more organically than it breaks immediately and there's a crisis. So we I just love seeing how different companies go through that journey. And just by background, John and Eric, I in my first real operating job, I had a business unit that was 6 million and I had a business unit that was 250 million. And so part of my scale perspective is that early in my career, I had a portfolio of different scale, somewhat similar types of businesses. And it was a great learning experience for me.
And Jeff and John, we've got a variety of business leaders that tune into the podcast that want to hear these ideas. A lot of them are at different stages in scaling their business. So today, kind of how I want to break this down is to think about it by stage and think about it from that 5 million revenue stage all the way up to 100. What are some of the things at each one of these different stages that our business leader audience may run into? So we've already heard it early. It's that shift in mindset, that way that, the leaders kind of have to get out of the way of themselves. They have to get the right team in place. They have to think about systems. But what else do you see kind of at that early sort of 5 million to 10 million stage that we have to get past first in order to get to scale?
Yeah, 5 to 10 is the early trust period. You have to understand the decision making and then allocate trust to do it. Even the founder team has to start to instrument with systems and some level of expected metrics that can be measured, the responsibility to make real decisions, not come back up and down the food chain consistently. You have to be able to trust that your organization sees the North Star consistent with you as the leader or the leaders.
Yeah, a lot of times we see leaders reacting to the symptoms from growth. A lot of mistakes I see oftentimes, and I'm sure you do as well, they try to hire their way out of it, thinking that they're going to hire a hero to solve all their problems instead of looking at the systems that should be put in place. What's some common like red flags you see around that conversation? And to piggyback on that a little bit, one of the many things y'all have added a lot of value to us is putting those hard financial metrics tied to those things. So as you know, we're very culture driven, people driven, customer value driven, operators at heart, but there's an associated financial metric or key metric we should be managing alongside that proves we are truly customer value focused, that truly, we truly are value focused from a cultural perspective. Help explore that a little bit with us, because that's been really valuable for us.
Well, thank you for saying that. I think you guys have run a spectacularly thoughtful business, which is why we wanted to be your partner. But enough about the Mutual Affection Society. Is that businesses don't really share their financial results up and down the entire company. That creates a lot of times this challenges, and so the financials are typically constrained at levels, and that's the nature of being smaller and private and owner operated. Recognizing that your organization doesn't have the full financial picture means that you do need to use systems, processes, and some metrics so you can allocate trust that as the leadership team, you can see the boundary conditions, but you can't get there unless you don't stay focused on a culture of delivering value and making sure that you make a gross profit on it. Those are things that can always be shared, top line revenue and gross profit. And we, so that people know that there's money to work with to build the organization, to find the next customer, to make sure that you're working on future solution opportunities. And so I call that the phase where you grow into an understood business model formation, but with customer value as the primary drive.
Yeah, and I think to double click on a couple of things you said, because I think it's really valuable for owners and founders and entrepreneurs that they're scaling their business is you need to be proving that your financial metrics scale with the way you're operating. So for instance, you have to start discriminating against different types of customers because not all customers are the same. And you may enjoy serving them or you may like it, but they're not producing the customer profit that is necessary to scale the business, and you'll scale yourself out of business by not focusing on the right things. And I think the other thing there, and I'd love, to comment on it too, is a lot of us, let's just say entrepreneurs, business owners, CEOs are sometimes scared of partners like yourself because, they're just going to run the business with a spreadsheet, right? It's all about the money. It's all about the money. It's all about the money. Which is not the case, right? You're saying it's all about customer value, and then we're going to use the financial metrics and make sure we monitor that closely to make sure we're around long term to add customer value to serve this market. And that's been awesome for us to experience with you to help us validate some of that stuff because our intuition often lies to us in some of these things.
Well, it can. Well, first of all, we had obviously numerous conversations before we ultimately became partners. And I hope that we've been what we said we were going to be, which is we are determined. I have a phrase called leading your capital that you've heard from me a couple of times. And so leading capital means the human capital of your organization, the financial capital of your investors, the financial capital of the revenue your customers give you, to produce a business model that rewards your employees and your investors. So I do love leadership conversations about making sure that all stays connected and instrumented, knowing that it's really hard work, but also knowing that it requires systems, processes, and one North Star, which is customers pay the rent. And so I'll leave you, I'll reiterate the point you just made, which is sometimes when you're the founder and the checkbook ain't that full and a customer's offering you, it's very difficult to walk away from revenue. And so nobody listening to this podcast should hear revenue arrogance from us. Revenue matters. Getting revenue is the lifeblood. It's, can you grow into a scale and a skill and a repeatability where some revenue is better than others. And when you do that early in a life cycle, which, John, I do think Fast Slow Motion was disciplined about those things, it allows you to make more purposeful scaling choices and use the systems to allocate the trust and controls and responsibility. And leaders matter in that thought process.
And Jeff, as we continue the scaling journey past that 10 million mark, when you're getting kind of that 10 to 25 million, you got real departments, you got handoffs, you got accountability, your team is growing, obviously. This is where we really need to start thinking about metrics. We need to start thinking about rhythms. We need to start really focusing on effective systems. What do you see show up in that band, that 10 to 25 band, that are just non-negotiables. If we're going to stay on this rocket ship, if we're going to keep scaling, what do we have to nail at this point in our scaling journey to get past?
Humility. You have to recognize that at a certain scale, no one has the level of nuances of what's really going on at the customer level or at the competition to get a new customer level. There's just too many. You have to have too many transactions, meetings, conversations, negotiations. And so the nuances start to become fuzzier and require more humble conversations about, I don't know what's really going on here. And so decision making needs to go more and more into informed trust. You have to be able to get in those meetings and trust that you may be the boss, but you don't know as much as the people bringing the information. And they don't know as much as you about what your financial model may need to be. So it's humility to allow the organization to breathe information and decision-making cadence to scale.
Yeah, we see, companies of that size, they have a ton of data at this point, right? Very little of it's useful. And they tend to lack clarity because of that, right? Their data's all over the place because they typically got a bunch of systems, got a bunch of people now, got a bunch of processes all over the place. What do you see the best teams doing kind of solving that visibility problem to get that consistency so that the company can then start making really good actionable decisions on the data to have clarity to really know what's going on? Because at the top, you're not touching the customers, you're not touching the frontline employees, you're not seeing it on a day-to-day basis. So it's a lot of times you're kind of driving the car blinded in a lot of ways.
I do think that the top couple of levels going all the way down need to have the willingness to use the data, use the systems, but have real humble conversations about, why did we lose that deal? We should have won that deal. And so the ability to then pick specific areas that are the governors of the momentum and judgment and outcome. You go from give wisdom to receive wisdom.
Yeah, I want to highlight something that you said, but I think is really important. And I almost call it a pro tip. And I think it comes so naturally to you, but may not be obvious to a lot of people is your to fill in the data gaps and the visibility gaps, you scrutinize the data that is being sent to you. And if you criticize or make decisions or ask questions about the data that's being presented to you at the top, you will force accountability all the way through the chains to make sure that data is accurate. And it'll create a system of like, okay, everybody's paying attention to this. We better make sure it's right.
Yes.
And it forces, and I see that a lot where at the top, a lot of times they're not holding their team accountable to the data and they're scrutinizing their team and the person instead of scrutinizing the data. And it's a great way to disarm that conversation with the team, but also reinforce the value of like, this is important because our team is, our CEO is making decisions off this. And if it's not right, we're going to steer the ship into the ground.
I want enough information coming to me as the top that I don't go disrupt the organization looking for something I think I want to know. Striking that balance of having the information come up or come through the organization and knowing enough about the systems and who gets to make the decisions to where you can make sure you understand what risks are being taken or what judgments are being made. And so just trusting and creating that trust with information systems and processes is, if you strive for it as a leader, then that empowers the people that are going to grow into your best decision makers, because they're going to feel room to take ownership. And we call that owner operators. I always, and this is, stylistically the way I've always told people, we are owner operators. We don't own the whole business, because I've always worked for public companies. We don't own the business, but we do, because the owners don't want to make all these decisions. So we need to make them as if we're the owners and reward our owners for trusting us. And they will reward us back by giving us capital to grow our careers and grow this business. So
Yeah, that's an excellent point and a great segue, Jeff, as we think about this next band, this band from 25 to 50, obviously resonating with John and I. This is kind of the story we're living right now, where that operating system becomes crucial, where that accountability and ownership at every level, that humility you mentioned earlier, now is mission critical to make it through this stage. What do you see in addition to those shifts that leaders need to be thinking about at this 25 to 50 band to keep their company scaling in a healthy manner without burning their team out?
Yeah. So I actually just had coffee Friday with the founder of a business it's gone from 20 to 60. At the end of breakfast, I said, you need to stop going and inspecting work. That flipping it from I'm going to go inspect your work and coach you or tell you how it should be done to I'm going to receive the value of the way you all do it within boundary conditions. That's really hard.
Yeah, Jeff, as you were talking, I was thinking about something. And so often I think you see it as where the leaders and the processes and the systems and really everything that got you where you are today isn't necessarily where going to get you to that next level. And so much of this oftentimes is, you can look at very few examples like Mark Zuckerberg's one, very few examples that can take it all the way from idea through running a public company. And how, as you're going through these different bands of growth and you're, from your experience, how are you mentoring and then really measuring, okay, is the leader capable of taking that next step? Because as you said, it's hard. There's nothing easy about that level of growth and the way you run the business, and everything you did previously doesn't really apply to leading and growing the organization at that next level. Just as you alluded to, I would be horrible today if I was, leading a project, and thank God we got people on our team doing that way better than I ever thought possible. But a lot of times we see that where the leaders are still at the tip of the spear, talking to the customers and doing all these kinds of things. I assume you see that a lot as well. And then what conversations do you have with those leaders to help them either realize or get them to where they need to be before you bring in some new talent to help them get to where they need to be?
I think the size of the market opportunity and the demand to fulfill and the complexity of how you fulfill it and the range where you can and cannot really deliver value, that is really important for the owner of a business or owners of a business to be measuring and talking about. That will always be true up the scale curve. Design to meet the demand opportunity and ambition of a business. Always encourage leaders and owners to be as ambitious as the value they can deliver allows. And then go a little beyond it if you think market wants you to do more than you're sure you can do. But hold yourself accountable for not failing to deliver it. And then figure out, can you make it scalable? And that is the discipline of looking at who you are and what you can be.
Jeff, everything we've talked about today is resonating. Obviously, customer value, client value, systems, humility, leadership. We've talked our way up this chain now. We're at this 50 million to 100 million band at this level. And you mentioned this a few moments ago. We have to have fundamental changes in leadership. We have to be thinking about the business in different ways. What else do you see at that level in a company's maturity and in a company's evolution that really is that game changer of, hey, we're gonna keep growing this thing and expanding this thing and delivering value, or maybe we've hit our ceiling and this is what it is?
First of all, I would say any leader or leadership team that gets a business from wherever to whatever should be applauded. Like, growing a business is that's what drives our economy. Ambition and market opportunity don't always have to align with what you effort. If you have capital partners, you're supposed to effort it, right? Well, that's part of what John had and you guys had to decide, which is we can't get comfortable here. We actually want to go there. To go there, we think Circumference Group, Jeff and his team will help us. They won't get in our way. And so I do strongly believe that on that scale curve, somewhere in there, you don't necessarily have to bring in partners, but being able to find people that can give you aligned truth and real aligned insights or coaching that is not a bad thing to do. You don't have to do it, but that's why we set up Circumference, to participate with some companies that feel like they want some of that.
Yeah, that was, it was on the personal side for me. And, I talked a lot about this when we were dating, so to speak. Is like, I've never built a company this big, and I want to be a good steward of this opportunity. And I love the way you kind of phrased it, is because a lot of times we beat ourselves up as at anything, right? Any person with ambition or people that are constantly trying to get better, it's never good enough, right? You're always late. And then just recognizing that at some point, you are going to be done, whatever, right? You've worked yourself out of a job. There's somebody better than you that can do it. You don't have the hunger that you once had before. It stops being fun. You've hit the market top, right? There's no more demand there to take, no more value to extract, whatever it may be. But recognizing that, having the humility to recognize it, that self-awareness to recognize it, and the ability to, like, okay, let's work through this as a team with a partner like Circumference Group is just extremely invaluable. And it's been huge for us to have you and your team on board to help us on these journeys to figure these things out, because they're hard decisions, and you want to be a good steward of things. Early on, you have nothing to lose. At the $100 million level, you've got a lot to lose, right? And you don't want to screw that up. Do you see anything other than kind of that leadership cap, or perhaps the demand cap, or anything else that cause businesses at that level to stall?
If you're in a business that's relatively dynamic, you have to always be thinking about, this is what we do today, but in 1, 2, and 3 years, we can't let that get old. We can't let that get rusty. And so I really think dynamic leaders, sometimes that the complexity of scale sucks the forward thinking out of the system. That tends to be, and then we got to make some money here. There's money to be made. And so I would always challenge people not to criticize them, but to say, always remember that you as the leader and owners are allowed to and should be saying, are we going to be selling something different in 12 months or 18 months? Because your competition, you may not even know what they're doing, but people are going to be competing. So if you find your organization static, that's when you as the leader need to say, I got to unlock I may be the problem. I don't need to fire myself. I need to re-energize or rethink my role. And so I think when we look at a business, we just try to see, is this team committed to customer value? Do they know how to drive rewards for an organization? And do they actually want to dynamically work with a partner on these conversations?
Everybody's kind of facing this with AI. And so just what you talked about, it's like forcing every business, even the people doing pavement work, are having to rethink how they do things, and because everybody's business is being disrupted. And it's, those businesses that are thinking like you're thinking have a huge advantage right now. The ones that want to just stay status quo and are fighting the complexity and chaos of all the things we talked about, they better wake up, or they're going to wake up one day and their business is going to be disrupted. And it's going to be sooner rather than later, based on the way this technology is evolving.
That's exactly right. Now, the good news is, at least as it relates to fast slow motion, you're at the heart of helping your customers have information that, if used properly, is extraordinarily important in terms of the nuances of forward growth for your customers. Your customers seeing what's happening with their accounts, their prospects, and so that's part of why we were attracted to fast slow motion. We felt like you as a company are in the middle of some of the information that has to be used wisely, and you're also technical enough and strategic enough to maybe help your customers, at least some of them, think beyond just the instance they've implemented, and be thinking about, what else can I drive off of this core platform or these platforms, or fast slow motion's skill set in terms of integrating other ideas. And so I think the fast slow motion is a business with opportunity through the complexity. Not all businesses can get on their front foot when it gets this complicated. So But yes, this AI thing has come on faster and more disruptive than anything in my lifetime. And I will tell you, if it's helpful to your audience or our audience, I was talking to not one, but a couple of my PE friends who own technology businesses, and some of their portfolio companies are on their front foot and some of their portfolio companies are not. And to hear these highest level in our economy professionals admit that it happened fast, that's the part that which no one should say, oh my gosh, I'm terrible, I missed this. It's about accepting it, thinking about it, responding to it, and doing that thing that leaders do. That's be my encouragement. That people that are flying their own airplanes have been overwhelmed by the velocity of how fast things are being driven.
I think just on a broader scale, Jeff, and the value CG's brought to us is just having an external perspective, having someone else come in, take a look at your business, ask those tough questions to help you kind of scale. We are drawing close to our time together here. Want to be respectful of that. Jeff, one thing we ask all of our guests is if you have one piece of advice or one quote that has made a significant impact on you as a leader that you would love to share with our listening audience, what is that quote or piece of advice?
Well, is it okay if I give you a couple that link?
Absolutely.
So focus, simplify, execute. Focus on customer value. Simplify, 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 and execute what you said you were going to do. One of my board members at Altel, when I was complaining about something after delivering a really good quarter, he said, if you're not happy when you can be, you never will be. So you have to celebrate wins, particularly in a complex evolution. Every meeting isn't going to be good. Every customer situation isn't going to be good. The financials may not be good, but you have to, as a leader, find a way to celebrate, to re-energize your team, to re-energize yourself. And then a great quote from that I've used and that my boss coined, which is success has many parents and failure is my child. Those are all, Eric and John, they're really about the blessing of working in an economy where if you try to do a good thing for customers and then you intentionally design to do it for more customers, sometimes you fail and laugh. Sometimes you succeed and laugh. Sometimes you're exhausted. But that is what leadership in this economy, now with AI disrupting everything, is going to require. So I highly encourage people, find the wins so that you can drive through the hard work and stay focused, keep it simple, and execute it.
Jeff, all that's incredibly valuable. And I hope our listening audience has really been taking notes, paying attention, dialing into some of the concepts we've unpacked today. John, before we wrap, any final thoughts or quotes from you?
Yeah, I agree with Jeff. I often say to myself first and then to our team that, we should always be grateful and content, but never satisfied. And it's, that we're very blessed but man, I want to get better. I want to improve. And, hard is fun and easy is boring. And so if things aren't hard right now, we're doing something wrong, right? We're not trying hard enough. We're not growing fast enough. We're not challenging ourselves fast enough. So I encourage you, our audience, like you did, Jeff, is, just to hang in there, enjoy the journey, and it's worth it. And it's exciting and fun and scary all at the same time.
Jeff, John, thanks again. For our listeners, if you want to learn more about Jeff and Circumference Group, we're going to have some information in the show notes on any of the platforms. You can see us there. If you're listening and thinking, hey, this sounds like us. We've outgrown our current way of operating. We need some of these conversations within our business. That's the kind of problems we solve here at Fast Slow Motion. So not giving you the sales pitch, but we do help those leadership teams build the right processes, implement the automation and visibility to scale on Salesforce or HubSpot. As always, you can catch past episodes of this show at fastslowmotion.com/podcast, Spotify, YouTube, all the major platforms. While you're there, we'd love to hear your feedback. If you want us to touch on a subject in the future, you want to drop us a comment, thumbs up, thumbs down. We're trying to deliver the maximum amount of value with this content that we can to you. So definitely let us know what you think. Thanks again for joining us.